The wind howled down from the Cascade Mountains like a hungry thing. Snow fell in thick sheets, blurring the edges of the pine trees and swallowing the narrow trail that cut between the hills. It was the kind of cold that burned your lungs and made the world go silent except for the crunch of boots and the distant call of a lone crow. Anna Carter, 10 years old, trudged through the whitened forest, a dinted metal milk can clutched tightly in each mittened hand. Her cheeks were flushed red, and her woolen scarf was pulled high across her face. Every morning, she helped her grandparents deliver fresh milk to the nearest trailhead, where it was collected by townsfolk. She didn't mind the cold, not really. She liked the way the world quieted in winter, like it was holding its breath. But that morning, something was different. It started as a sound so faint she thought it might have been the wind. A soft, high-pitched whimper, barely louder than a sigh. Anna stopped, squinting into the trees. There it was again, a cry. No, a plea. She set the cans down carefully and stepped off the trail, boots sinking into snow up to her ankles. The whimper grew louder, leading her deeper into the woods. And then she saw them. 2 small bundles huddled against a tree trunk. German Shepherd puppies, no more than a few months old. They were tied tightly with coarse rope, fur matted with ice, ribs visible beneath thin skin. One lifted its head weakly. The other didn't move at all. Anna dropped to her knees, heart pounding. "Oh no, what happened to you?" Her voice trembled, but her hands didn't. She reached for the rope, already knowing this was the moment everything would change. Anna didn't remember the walk back, only the burn in her arms as she carried both puppies close to her chest, their limp bodies pressed against the wool of her coat. Snow lashed her face. The wind howled around her like a warning, but she didn't stop, not once. The moment she reached the farmhouse porch, she shouted through the door, "Grandpa, Grandma, hurry!" Her grandparents Thomas and Evelyn Carter came rushing out. One look at the 2 motionless bundles in Anna's arms, and they knew. No questions asked. Evelyn ushered them inside, clearing space near the fireplace. Thomas grabbed dry towels and the emergency blanket they kept for sick livestock. Together, they worked in quiet urgency. Evelyn lit the hearth and set a pot of warm water nearby. Thomas rubbed the puppies gently with towels, trying to stir some life into their cold bodies. Anna knelt close, her hands hovering over their fur, afraid to touch too hard. "They're still breathing," Grandpa finally said, voice low. "Barely, but they are." Anna's eyes filled with tears. She reached out and stroked the darker puppy's ear. "His name's Lucky," she whispered. Then, glancing at the lighter one, "And she's Noelle, like the snow." The name settled around the room like a prayer. Evelyn showed Anna how to fill a dropper with warm milk and carefully bring it to each puppy's lips. At first, they didn't react. Then, Lucky gave the smallest flick of his tongue. Noelle followed with a weak suckle. "That's it," Anna whispered. "Good babies." When the feeding was done, Anna brought out an old laundry basket and lined it with the pink blanket from her own bed. She gently tucked Lucky and Noel inside, folding another towel over their tiny frames. Then she sat beside them, one hand resting on their backs, the other wiping at her cheek. She didn't move for a long time. The fire crackled softly behind her. Days passed, and the snow outside the farmhouse stayed thick and unforgiving. But inside, warmth bloomed like spring. The pink blanket in the laundry basket was now more than just bedding. It was a cradle of recovery. Anna checked on Lucky and Noelle every hour, setting alarms even during the night. She learned how to clean their paws gently with warm cloths, how to keep their bellies warm with rice socks her grandmother helped her make. Every new breath they took felt like a victory. They began to respond, tiny tail wags, eyes that followed her across the room, weak but growing sounds, whimpers that turned into barks, soft and raspy like newborn voices. Anna built them a little bed by the kitchen window, a repurposed crate lined with fresh fabric and stitched with her name. It was pink, of course, everything was. She liked to say it made them dreams sweeter. Her grandfather taught her how to guide them. Voice, hand, and heart, he said, that's how dogs listen. He showed her how to call gently, reward gently, wait patiently. Lucky, the darker pup, was bold, always the first to sniff, to leap, to stumble into mischief. Noelle, smaller and more reserved, watched first, then followed with quiet trust. They became Anna's shadows, following her into the barn, to the milk shed, even curling beneath the table while she did her homework. Where Anna went, they went. When she laughed, they wagged. When she whispered secrets, they listened. And in return, they gave her something she hadn't known she was missing: purpose. At just 10 years old, Anna wasn't just a little girl helping out on a farm. She was someone's safe place, someone's entire world. Her grandmother smiled one evening, watching them nap on either side of Anna near the fire. "You've got yourself a family now, sweetheart." Anna looked down at their sleeping bodies, then back up at the flicker of firelight in the window glass. "I think they picked me," she said softly, "and I picked them right back." 6 months slipped by like pages turning in a favorite book. The snow had melted, giving way to meadows of green and wildflowers that stretched beyond the barn. Lucky and Noelle were no longer the fragile bundles Anna had once carried in her coat. They had grown strong, alert, full of life. Every morning, the three of them moved as one. They helped with milking, chased butterflies in the pasture, and trotted beside Anna on her delivery route like they'd been born for the job. Lucky still led with his fearless bounce, while Noelle followed with quiet loyalty. One sunny afternoon, while tying up bottles at the trailhead post, Anna spotted a flyer flapping against the old wooden board. Curious, she stepped closer. Across the top, bold letters read, "Town Training Contest, All Dogs Welcome." There was a picture of children and their dogs navigating obstacle courses, jumping through hoops, sitting proud with ribbons. Anna's eyes lit up. She read every word twice, heart thumping. "They could do this," she whispered, gripping the paper tight. That evening, at dinner, she unfolded the flyer across the table. "Grandpa, Grandma, can I take Lucky and Noelle, just for the experience?" Thomas leaned back, studying the paper. Evelyn looked at Anna, then smiled. "Why not?" she said gently. "They're ready, and so are you." Anna beamed, already imagining the course, the crowd, the thrill. Not for the prize, not even for the competition. She just wanted to show the world what love and second chances could do. The town square buzzed with excitement. Colorful banners swayed above the training grounds, and clusters of families gathered around to cheer, laugh, and take photos. Anna had never seen so many dogs in one place. Big ones, tiny ones, fluffy and lean, all trotting proudly beside their humans. Lucky and Noelle sat calmly by her side, their coats gleaming under the late spring sun. Anna smoothed her skirt, took a deep breath, and stepped forward when their names were called. The competition wasn't about tricks, it was about trust. Sit, stay, come, jump, walk at heel. Anna guided them with her voice, just like Grandpa had taught her. Lucky soared over the small hurdles with ease, tail wagging like a flag. Noelle, quiet and precise, moved like a shadow beside her. When it was over, the judge handed Anna a bright red ribbon. "Exceptional teamwork," he said. "These two adore you." Anna beamed. She knelt and hugged them both. "We did it," she whispered. "We really did." But someone else had been watching. From the edge of the crowd, a tall man in a leather jacket stood with arms crossed. His eyes were fixed on Lucky and Noelle, calculating, cold. Daniel, the owner of an illegal dog training ring deep in the woods, saw more than 2 dogs. He saw potential, obedience, profit. And in his mind, a plan was already forming. That victory night felt like a promise, full of joy, light, and the sound of laughter echoing into the stars. Anna tucked the red ribbon beneath her pillow, not knowing that joy was about to slip quietly out the back door. The house was quiet that night, lit only by the soft orange glow of the dying fire. Lucky and Noelle lay curled at the foot of Anna's bed, just like always, one paw draped over the other, breathing in sync, warm and safe. Anna drifted off to sleep with a smile still on her face, the red ribbon tucked beneath her pillow. But while the world slept, a shadow moved through the trees. Daniel had watched. waited. He knew the farmhouse was isolated, the barn door latch simple. He didn't need noise, just speed and darkness. By the time the rooster crowed, Lucky and Noelle were gone. Anna awoke to silence. She reached down, expecting to feel fur, a tail, sleepy warmth. But the space was empty. She sat up sharply. Lucky? Noelle? Nothing. She ran downstairs, heart hammering, calling out their names. She searched the porch, the barn, the pastures. No tracks, no fur, no broken fences, just absence. When she burst into the kitchen in tears, Evelyn wrapped her in a blanket. Thomas checked every lock, every gate. "We'll call the animal center," he said. Someone must have seen something. But no one had. One day passed, then two. A week. Posters were hung, neighbors asked, the sheriff notified, but no sign, no leads, no hope. Anna stopped delivering milk. She stopped smiling. She sat by the window with the leash still in her hand, eyes red, her voice hoarse from calling into the wind. Her world, once filled with paw prints and laughter, was now silent. Some nights, she left the door slightly open, just in case, and whispered into the darkness, "Please come home." At the edge of the forest, hidden behind layers of pine and rusted wire fencing, sat Daniel's compound, a crude training ground disguised as a kennel. Inside, Lucky and Noelle huddled in a shadowed corner of a locked pen. Gone were the soft blankets, the warm hands, the gentle voice of a girl who had once saved them. They weren't weak. In fact, they were clever, quick learners, deeply intuitive. But they didn't respond to yelling. They didn't yield to fear. They had been raised on kindness, shaped by gentle commands and warm hands. So when Daniel barked orders and cracked whips, they didn't fight back. But they didn't submit either. They simply looked away, ears pinned back, eyes dim with confusion. To Daniel, that was defiance. "Stupid animals," he growled. "You'll learn or starve." Each refusal to obey brought punishment. Kicks, hunger, isolation. Still, Lucky stayed close to Noelle, shielding her from the worst of it. Noelle, ever quiet, would tremble but never cower. They endured not because they were broken, but because they still remembered a different life, a better one. One afternoon, after yet another failed attempt to make them obey, Daniel's patience snapped. His voice rose in a vicious growl. "I've had enough. You're not worth the air you breathe." He dragged their crate from the pen, the metal screeching along the dirt floor. Lucky barked once, weak and hoarse, while Noelle curled into herself, trembling. Daniel didn't care. He hauled them into the back of his pickup truck, drove miles deep into the woods, and dumped the crate near a fallen tree. With a final kick, he tipped it over. "No food, no water. You want soft? Go find it." Then he drove off, the engine echoing through the trees. The forest closed in, cold, silent. But even in that cruel abandonment, Lucky and Noelle didn't whine. They looked at each other. And they stood. They limped for hours. Days blurred, no barking, no howling, just movement, one trembling paw after another. They crossed frozen streams, pushed through brush, collapsed, rose, and limped again, until finally, they saw it. The farmhouse. Just before dawn, Thomas opened the door to feed the animals. He froze. On the porch, lying side by side in the dirt, were two broken bodies, mud-caked, trembling, barely conscious. "Evelyn!" he shouted. Anna came running with bare feet, eyes wide. She fell to her knees, gasping. "Lucky? Noelle?" They didn't move. But Lucky's tail gave the smallest twitch. Anna sobbed, scooping them both into her arms. "You came back," she whispered. "You found your way home." Later that morning, she sat by the fire, holding a bottle to Lucky's mouth. Noelle lay beside her, wrapped in layers of towels. This time, it wasn't Anna who found them. This time, they came back to her. That morning, Anna stared long at their scars again, the way Lucky flinched when a door slammed, the quiet tremble in Noelle's sleep. Something inside her said no more. She couldn't stay silent, not this time. Anna couldn't let it go. The scars on Lucky's legs, the torn skin under Noelle's neck. She didn't have photos or proof, just a gut feeling and a promise to protect them. So she went. With trembling hands, she stood at the Animal Welfare Center and told her story. "I think I know who hurt them," she whispered. Dana, the officer on duty, listened patiently. "Do you have any evidence, sweetie?" Anna shook her head. "Only what they've been through." There was a pause. Then Dana knelt down beside her. "Sometimes," she said gently, "dogs remember more than people expect. Would you let them show us?" Anna didn't hesitate. That night, she sat between Lucky and Noel in the barn, the warmth of hay all around them. She stroked their fur slowly, whispering, "Do you remember the place they took you? Can you show us the way?" Their ears twitched, eyes lifted. Lucky licked her hand once. Noelle pressed her head into Anna's lap. The next morning, with an officer behind the wheel, the three of them returned to the forest road. Lucky sat tall in the back seat, ears alert. Noelle lay quiet, eyes fixed on the window. Miles passed, then suddenly, barking, scratching. Lucky jumped up, tail stiff. Noelle joined him, pressing against the door. They remembered. Down a narrow dirt path, the truck rolled to a stop beside a rusted gate. Behind it, cages, chains, and shadows that moved. Daniel's hideout. He was arrested. The dogs were freed. And back in the barn, Anna curled up between Lucky and Noelle again, her voice barely a whisper. "You saved them," she said. "You saved all of them." The seasons shifted quietly. Snow melted into earth. Earth gave way to bloom. And just like the world outside, life on the little farm began again, with new energy, new hope. Lucky and Noelle had grown taller, stronger, but they never strayed far. Wherever Anna walked, across the fields to the barn, or on the long dirt path to the neighbors, two loyal shadows followed. She no longer needed a leash, just a look, a word, a soft call, and they were by her side. It had been a year since she found them in the woods, a year since the storm, and though the world had moved on, Anna hadn't forgotten. Neither had Lucky, nor Noelle. They were her protectors now, and she was theirs. One warm afternoon, as Anna sat under the old oak tree reading aloud from her notebook, Lucky rested his head on her lap. Noelle curled at her feet. She whispered to them between lines, "One day, I'm going to build a place for dogs like you, and for kids like me." It started as a drawing, then a letter to her future self. Then, when she turned 18, a blueprint. Her grandparents helped her buy a small plot of land by the edge of the forest. The town chipped in. Volunteers painted, hammered, and planted. And the doors of Anna's home for healing finally opened on a sunny spring day. It wasn't just a dog shelter. It was a place where children came after school to sit with rescues, where lonely people dropped by just to feel a heartbeat beside them, where no one, not animal, not human, ever felt left behind again. Lucky and Noelle were never far. They greeted every guest with quiet calm, guided every frightened pup to safety, and stayed by Anna's side, always. Years passed. The wooden sign at the entrance faded with time, but the words carved into it remained. They were once forgotten. Now they help others be remembered. And every morning, as the sun rose behind the hills, Anna stepped outside, warm mug in hand, two faithful shadows at her heels, still walking with her, like they always had. The night was brutally silent as 2-year-old Emma Walker trudged through the deep snow, her breath barely forming clouds in the frozen air. Her nightgown, soaked and stiff with ice, clung to her tiny frame, each step through the blizzard more desperate than the last. Her bare feet, purple from cold, barely made contact with the ground before slipping again, her balance faltering like a candle fighting wind. She didn't cry. Not loudly, just a weak, broken sound, half whimper, half breath, drifting into the white void around her. Somewhere deep in the forests of Pinebrook Ridge, the storm howled against the trees. A harsh wind sliced through the night like a blade, curling around homes with shuttered windows and unlit porches. No one saw the child stumble. No one knew she was missing. Emma's eyelashes clung together with frost. Her cheeks were raw, her lips split and silent. She fell, crawled, stood again and again. Finally, her legs buckled for the last time. On the edge of an empty road flanked by snowbanks and silence, Emma collapsed face first into the drift. Her arms curled close to her chest. Her body trembled, once, twice, then stilled. Above her, the storm raged on, but beneath the roar of wind and falling snow, there was a hush, a waiting. And from the darkness between trees, something was watching. Something that had been lost. Just like her. The shadow had been wandering the woods for longer than he remembered. Days, maybe weeks? Time had lost meaning somewhere between hunger and cold. His fur, once thick and noble, now hung in dull clumps, crusted with mud and snow. His ribs pressed against thin skin. Scars crossed his side like forgotten stories. He had long since stopped looking for people. People had let him down. But that night in the heart of the storm, something tugged at his instincts. A sound. Soft, almost not there. Not animal, not wind, something smaller, weaker. Human. He moved carefully, his paws leaving deep imprints in the snow. His ears twitched. His head stayed low, alert. And then he saw her. A child. Tiny, motionless, half buried in white. Shadow froze. Her scent reached him first. Frostbitten skin, fear, something faint and floral clinging to her damp clothes. He circled once, twice, unsure. No one was nearby. No human voice called for her. No parent, no warmth. Just her and the snow. Then, slowly, deliberately, Shadow stepped forward. He sniffed at her hair, nudged her shoulder. No reaction. And still, he stayed. With one heavy motion, he laid down beside her, pressed his side into hers, curled his body, his back arching over her fragile spine. His snout found its way to the hollow beneath her chin, where her pulse struggled quietly. There was no reason, no command, but something ancient moved within him, a loyalty not taught, but born. He didn't bark, he didn't move again, he simply stayed. And through the darkest hours of the night, while the wind screamed and the cold clawed at them both, a broken dog wrapped himself around a dying child and kept her alive. The sun had barely crept over the edge of Pine Brook Ridge when Daniel Hayes steered his snow vehicle down the old service trail, checking power lines that had snapped overnight. The storm had left the town battered, buried, breathless. It was quiet, the eerie kind of quiet that follows chaos. He almost passed it, just a misshapen mound on the side of the road. At first glance, nothing more than snow and debris, maybe a fallen branch, but something made him stop. A shape, a color, something too still. Daniel pulled over, stepped off his vehicle, and walked closer. His breath caught. A child's hand. He dropped to his knees, frantically brushing away snow. A tiny face appeared, pale, lips blue, eyes closed, and next to her, wrapped tightly around her body, was a dog. A large German shepherd, his fur tangled and frozen, his body unmoving except for the slow, guarded blink of his eyes. The dog didn't growl. He didn't bare his teeth. He just looked up at Daniel, tired and untrusting, but unwilling to move. "Oh my God," Daniel whispered, grabbing his radio. The emergency team arrived within minutes. Paramedics lifted Emma with the care of those handling something impossibly fragile. Her pulse? Faint, but present. Shadow tried to rise as they moved her, staggered, then collapsed again. They loaded them both, child and dog, into separate vehicles, 2 lives rescued from the edge of silence. As the ambulance disappeared down the snow-cleared path, Daniel stood alone by the road, staring at the indent in the snow where they'd been. 2 shapes, one barely bigger than the other, pressed together like a single heartbeat against the cold. He would never forget it. The moment kindness found them both. The hospital room was warm, filled with the soft hum of heaters and the quiet urgency of nurses moving with practiced hands. Emma lay under layers of heated blankets, her tiny frame motionless, her cheeks still a ghostly hue. Tubes connected to her arms, monitors beeped in steady rhythm, not strong, but stable. She was alive. Barely. In the next room over, the dog who had saved her lay on a padded table at the Pine Brook Veterinary Clinic, which adjoined the hospital. His body was exhausted, his temperature dangerously low. The vet team worked quickly, IV fluids, warm compresses, gentle words spoken aloud, even though no one expected the dog to respond. But Shadow did respond, with his eyes. He turned his head slowly whenever the door opened. Each time a new human entered, his gaze flicked toward them, searching, hoping, waiting. He was looking for her. Rachel Bennett, the night shift trauma nurse, had seen hundreds of cases. She had been there when they wheeled the child in, a tiny, nearly frozen body in the arms of a paramedic, and the whisper that followed. She had a dog. He was wrapped around her like a blanket. Later that morning, when her shift ended, Rachel walked quietly into the veterinary wing. And there he was, Shadow. He didn't bark, didn't move, but when Rachel sat down beside his table and whispered, "She's safe," something in him shifted. His ear twitched. His eyes slowly blinked, heavy with exhaustion, but no longer wild. Rachel sat there for a long time. There was something unspoken between them, not just relief, but recognition. As if he had been carrying something more than weight and cold through that storm. As if he had made a choice to love, even when the world had long stopped loving him back. Later that day, when Emma stirred faintly in her hospital bed, her first sound wasn't a cry. It was a whisper. "Doggy." The first photo went viral before the sun had even set. It was grainy, taken by a nurse on her break, showing Emma wrapped in blankets, her hand resting lightly on the fur of a large German shepherd, curled up beside her hospital bed. His eyes were half closed, but watchful, protective, unmoving. The caption was simple: "He never left her." Within hours, news outlets picked it up. Local headlines turned national. "Stray dog saves toddler in deadly snowstorm." They called him Shadow, a name given by the vet staff, because he had followed Emma through the dark and stayed even when the light returned. Comments flooded in. "That dog is a guardian angel. Give him a medal, give him a home. Dogs don't abandon their own, why should we?" Rachel watched it all unfold with quiet awe. Donations poured into the hospital. Toys, clothes, cards addressed to Emma and Shadow. Children sent hand-drawn pictures. Veterans, dog lovers, parents, all moved by the silent loyalty of a stray no one had wanted and a child no one yet knew. But beneath the beauty of the headlines lay a more urgent truth. No one knew where Emma had come from. She had been found with no shoes, no ID, no trace of family. An investigation was opened immediately. Still recovering in her hospital bed, Emma reached out for Shadow every time he visited. Her tiny fingers twisted gently into his fur. Her breathing slowed whenever he was near. Shadow, too, seemed to need her. They were not just survivors of a storm. They were each other's anchor. For days, the search for Emma's identity turned up nothing. No missing child reports. No family stepping forward. Just a child rescued from snow and silence, and the dog who refused to leave her side. Until the 6th day. Detectives tracing footprints from the site where Emma had been found came across a second location, just a few hundred yards deeper into the forest. There, under a cluster of snow-laden branches, they discovered the body of a woman, curled on her side, arms folded tightly across her chest as if shielding something. Her name was Catherine Walker, Emma's mother. She had no coat, no supplies, just a thin sweater, torn gloves, and traces of frostbite on her hands. But what broke the officer's silence wasn't how she died. It was how close she had stayed. According to the medical examiner, she had likely died the night before Emma was found. Cold and hunger had taken her. But evidence was clear. She'd been holding Emma until her last breath. And somehow, Emma had wandered from her mother's side into the storm and into Shadow's path. When Rachel heard, she sat for a long time at Emma's bedside, holding her tiny hand in silence. This wasn't a case of neglect. It was love. Love pushed to the very edge of survival. Rachel felt something shift inside her. The grief she carried from a loss long ago, a child she never got to hold, met this child who had been held until the very end. Later that night, as Shadow lay beside Emma once more, Rachel made a quiet promise. "You'll never be alone again." Rachel Bennett lived alone in a modest 2-bedroom house just outside town, nestled among tall pines that still held traces of snow on their branches. The second bedroom had sat untouched for years, a quiet space filled with soft light and silent sorrow. It had once been meant for a baby who never arrived. Now it held a crib again, and inside a little girl was sleeping. Emma adjusted slowly to the rhythm of Rachel's home. Her movements were still hesitant, her eyes often searching not for danger, but for familiarity, for Shadow. The dog never strayed far. From the moment they stepped into the house together, Shadow claimed his place not just on the rug by the fireplace, but in every heartbeat of the home. He followed Emma with gentle attentiveness, his steps soft, his presence constant. When she played, he lay nearby. When she napped, he curled beside her crib, his ear twitching at the smallest sound. One morning, Rachel caught her breath when she saw it. Emma, giggling, really giggling, as Shadow gently nudged a stuffed bear across the floor with his nose. The sound filled the house like sunlight cracking through cloud cover. Rachel sat on the stairs and let the warmth wash over her. Later that week, when Emma toddled into the kitchen and wrapped her arms around Shadow's neck, whispering, "My doggy," something in Rachel broke open. Not with sadness, but something closer to peace. The house that had once echoed with emptiness now pulsed with laughter, footsteps, the soft rustle of paws, and bare feet on hardwood. And in the quiet moments, when Rachel watched the two of them curled together under a blanket or bathed in afternoon light on the carpet, she whispered to herself, "I think you brought her back to life." But the truth was, they were bringing each other back. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, one of those early spring days where the air still held a bite, but the ground was finally soft beneath the grass. Rachel and Emma had made it a habit to visit the local park every weekend. It was open, lively, full of other children and dogs, safe in the way only small towns could still feel. Emma loved the swing set, but more than anything, she loved throwing a tennis ball for Shadow, who would fetch it gently, never too far, always circling back to her side like a silent guardian. That day, Rachel sat on a nearby bench chatting with a neighbor, her eyes flicking between conversation and the little girl in pink overalls squealing with laughter under the bright sun. Shadow was only a few feet from her, tail wagging, waiting for the next toss. It happened in seconds. A man, disheveled, sunken-eyed, stepped out from behind a maintenance shed. His pace was casual at first, but his eyes locked on Emma. Then he moved faster. Rachel didn't see it until she heard Emma scream. By the time she turned, the man had already grabbed Emma's arm, pulling her toward the tree line with terrifying speed. But Shadow had already seen. There was no bark, no hesitation, just a sudden, forceful explosion of movement, a blur of fur and muscle surging across the park. The growl that erupted from Shadow's chest didn't sound like it belonged to this world. It was raw, primal, terrifying. The man turned just in time to see the dog mid-air. Shadow slammed into him with enough force to knock him flat. Emma fell backward onto the grass as the stranger screamed. Shadow didn't bite at first. He stood over Emma, teeth bared, hackles raised, a wall of fury between the child and the threat. The man swung, tried to kick, but Shadow lunged again, this time catching his sleeve, dragging him down once more. Rachel was already running, heart pounding. She scooped Emma into her arms just as the man struggled to his feet and stumbled away, bleeding and broken. Police arrived minutes later. The entire incident had been caught on park surveillance. The man had previously been under investigation by police for his ties to a suspected child abduction ring. Shadow was hailed a hero. Again. The adoption hearing took less than 15 minutes. In a quiet courtroom lit by mid-morning sun, Rachel held Emma on her hip, her free hand loosely gripping Shadow's leash. The judge, a kind-eyed woman who had read every detail of their case, signed the final documents with a smile. "Congratulations, Ms. Bennett," she said gently. "They're officially yours." Rachel blinked back tears as Emma nestled closer, unaware of the weight of the moment. Shadow, ever still, leaned into Rachel's leg, as if he too understood they were no longer lost things in the world, but finally found. Outside the courthouse, a small crowd had gathered. Neighbors, nurses, volunteers, people who had followed their story from the very beginning. They clapped, they hugged. Someone handed Rachel a bouquet of daisies. And just like that, they were a family. That summer, Rachel founded the Shadow and Emma Sanctuary, a peaceful space on the edge of town for children in crisis and dogs without homes. It wasn't large, but it was warm, real. Every wall held photos of second chances. Every room echoed with laughter, soft footsteps, and the occasional bark of joy. Shadow, now stronger and filled out with a glossy coat, became the heart of the sanctuary. He greeted every new child with quiet patience, letting them pet him, lean into him, whisper things they couldn't say to anyone else. Emma grew, fearless and gentle, often showing new arrivals where the best hiding spots were, or how to sneak extra treats to the dogs. Years passed. Shadow slowed down. His muzzle turned gray, his steps were measured, his naps longer, but he never strayed far from Emma or Rachel. One golden afternoon, as Emma tossed a ball for a younger rescue pup, Shadow lay beside Rachel on the porch, head resting on her foot. "You saved us," she whispered, stroking his soft fur. "You brought us home." Shadow let out a quiet breath, his body warm beneath the golden light, his eyes closed, not with weariness, but with peace, the kind found only by those who have fulfilled their purpose. He had grown old, but never alone.